I repeat, we must tame the IPPs. They must be put out of business with Kenya Power. The Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, EPRA, in Kenya plays a crucial role in regulating the energy sector. And this is where we say we used to sit on this board. As we are affected, what affects Kenyans most, particularly working people, men and women, is the cost of electricity. And this Act of 2019, Section 12 on representation, must be amended to allow workers to sit on this regulatory board so that we can be able to voice our concerns as consumers of electricity in this country. And we must also be there to make sure that as we regulate electricity, we don't have people sitting there waiting and getting a lot of money for nothing. We are proposing that the spillage should be reduced, spillage or the electricity that is being used without being counted for must be reduced at Kenya Power by forthwith stopping outsourcing in regards to the maintenance and construction of power lines. They normally outsource private people to install electricity or to build those trunk lines of electricity. And these are people who are not trained by Kenya Power. And after those people having worked for Kenya Power, they are the people who involved in illegal installation of electricity. Kenya Power must have its own people that are trained, employed permanently without outsourcing, and making sure that the engineering instructions of provision of electricity is adhered to, not as it is today. Find cross-creasing of electricity wires in estates without somebody to make sure that these wires the construction of electricity lines are constructed in accordance with the engineering instructions on electricity. Kenya Power must provide more meters. Right now we have so many people who are using electricity without meters, simply that there are no meters. And this is where we have or we lead to commercial losses by Kenya Power. Kenya Powers must streamline its procurement process to hasten procurement of critical materials and remove a lot of vested interests in procurement. This one must be done. And we want also to appeal to government, those well-connected people who own IPPs. Their names should be made public so that Kenyans can know them and make sure that electricity is more cheaper. I know those people who make money, some are senior people in the government, and it is our duty and duty of parliamentarians to come out and carry out research and mention them on the floor of the House. That is what parliamentarians are there for. I want to take this opportunity once again to thank you, Chair, and to make sure that what we have said forms part and parcel of your recommendation. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for your detailed presentation. I will allow members, now that you said you may need to leave, so that if there is any member who has a question or comment towards your presentation, can do so.
Yeah. Chair?
Yes, Chonga.
Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Honorable Ken Chonga, Member of Parliament for Cliffy South, and a member of this committee. Thank you, Chair.
All right. So I really want to thank you. I want to agree with many of your observations. It's a puzzle that Kenyans, majority of the IPPs are owned by Kenyans. And these Kenyans prefer or enter into deals that must be paid in foreign currencies. And you can see how much the Kenya shilling was against the US dollar some 20 years when some of the agreements were signed, and what the value is today, for instance. It effectively tells you that going by the weight of Kenya shilling, for majority of the IPPs, when they signed some of these deals some 10 years or so, that we actually have already overpaid them, because they have been paid in dollar, and by weight of Kenya shillings is already double. So it means that these people just strike deals, and when you ask, they say nobody is interested in investing locally so that we can use local money. Absolutely. They claim to have borrowed the money. And interestingly, it is contrary to what you are saying, because if NSSF Tanzania is investing in power, why not here? And who really has approached NSSF Kenya? And they say they are not able to invest in this particular business, so that at least we can also sign these power purchase agreements in the local currency. Because one of the things that is eating us is actually that element of the foreign currency. So I want to thank you in a special way, and we'll get to the bottom of it. We will unearth. We am aware, for the benefit of the committee and the media, because last time we pronounced ourselves as far as getting the ownership of the companies is concerned. I want to confirm that we wrote to the registrar of companies, and they have written back with the ownership. We are yet to go through the details of the ownership of these companies, because most of these companies, in the IPP business, they hide under the shareholding of another company. So that if somebody wants to hide their name, they list themselves as another company. And when you look at the shareholding of that other company, then you find another company. So we'll get to the bottom of it, even if it is 10, the chain goes 10 times, so that we can know who are these shareholders who are always listed as companies, which we suspect are interested parties. There is enough reason to believe that some of the senior officials might have had a hand in signing of skewed power purchase agreements, and they have shareholdings either directly or indirectly through some other companies that are listed as shareholders in the CR12 of the IPPs we are dealing with. So, members, unless we have a member who has a comment to Mr. Dr. Atwoli. Atwoli, you want to say something?
Can I introduce myself?
Okay. Let me ask one member to introduce himself first.
Good morning. I'm Elisha Odhiambo, the MP for Game. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair, what I wanted to say.
There's another member. Yeah. Sorry.
Morning.
Yes.
Chair, my name is Mulanya, MP for Nambale.
Thank you very much. Any other member who has not introduced himself? All right. The comment from Dr. Atwoli.
Chair, what I wanted to say, Kenya Power operates under a specific parliamentary act. There is an act that, and you remember in my historical analysis, I started by Ordinance number 5, which came into place in 1922. So to tell these IPPs, you don't need to go to registrar to ask who are there and so on. Come up with a law to bar them out. Any electricity generating plant must be owned by either government parastatal or government itself directly. You would have solved those problems. That is how it is in Rwanda. And you need to go outside there and see. That is how it is in Tanzania. Look at other places. and they must be under control if you are interested. It is not an issue of them dictating, because some of the shareholders I know are big names and what have you. But this country does not belong to few individuals. And you parliamentarians, you must stand firm. Because if the have-nots will always be more than we people, we will be overrun.
Maybe let me ask you a direct question.
Yeah.
What we are dealing with here, we are also alive to commitments that the country has done through signed agreements, which also must be protected to some extent to boost investor confidence, so that we don't look like we are running away from deals that have been signed by the same very people who want to run away from. And therefore, then it becomes a challenge to wake up and then run away from agreements that have been signed. And the only way to deal with that, if we must run away from a signed agreement, then first we want to establish that there was an element of criminality in signing of this particular contract we want to run away from. So what we are attempting to do now, because we can't run away from signed contracts without a reason, then is to be able to establish connection between civil servants, senior government people who serve in the same energy ministries, directly or indirectly being involved in part of these skewed agreements, and then that becomes a good reason to say that this particular contract, even if we run away from it, then we are not breaking any particular law. Maybe from where you sit, where agreements have been signed, some of them international, and then you wake up and say, we don't want them anymore. What do you think is the implication?
Chair, if you listen to me carefully in my presentation, I say today, if you set up a commission or a committee of the engineers, very qualified engineers, in an area of electricity supply, and then you say we want to carry out and get a proper report on the supply of electricity by IPPs, maybe you will find 3 or 4, they are the people who are doing the job. And that would be enough reason to get away with these people. And any investor who is supposed to invest must be specific, sincere, honest, and up to an agreement that he or she entered into. So you cannot keep an investor or fear, say that we want to attract investors when the ordinary person in that particular country cannot afford to access the investments that those investors must put in place. It is the duty of any given government to protect its citizens. So, and I told you in my opening remarks that if you had a body of engineers, and Elisha is here, he worked for Power and Lighting, and you make him one, he knows where these people are coming from and where they are going. That is why I said we just came to supplement on what already you know. You will find that some of these IPPs are supplying air and making billions and billions of money in foreign exchange. Thank you, Chair.
Before I give just a minute, before I give Elisha, Daktari, actually some of those contracts are signed, they clearly say that we are paying you for supplying air. Even without establishing whether or not they are supplying air, there are contracts that are signed under take or pay agreement, whether you have cheaper power available or not. Whatever they produce, you must buy by force. Like Turkana is signed in that particular manner, that whatever it is they produce, you must buy by force, even if you have a cheaper source at that particular time. That is the agreement now. Now, with that agreement, there's nothing else to establish other than to understand why it was signed that way in the first place. There are others who are paying huge amounts of money through what you call capacity charge. Then you are paying them for keeping the generators there, just to keep the generators there. The amount of money we pay them, 1%, only 1% is for the power they are supplying, 99% is for keeping the generators there. But the agreement says we pay them for keeping the generators there. and you can't tell them today to take their generators. If you take them their generator, if you tell them to take their generators away, you pay them the money you agreed. That is a capacity charge. So the elephant in the room is big, and therefore we appreciate that approach, which in any case it's true. At some point, then the government must protect its people, must crack the whip, and then look at these contracts whether or not they were signed objectively. Let me ask just one member before we release you, so that he can make one comment. Let me start with Owino.
Thank you, Chair. To Dr. Atwoli, I just wanted some clarification. How is having a workers' body representative sit in the IPRA board going to help regulate or reduce the cost of power? Because you said you should be having a representative there. Thank you.
Then Mr. Mheshimiwa Elisha.
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
I'm glad that Dr. Atwoli is here because he represents a bigger majority of those who work for us. But I think more importantly, you are aware in the 12th Parliament, we attempted to investigate, do an inquiry on IPPs. Then Duale came with a motion. The government then appointed the Kwasi, under Kwasi chairmanship of Ngumi, who was representing political interests. And they made their recommendations based on what they wanted. But more important, I think, is what Dr. Atwoli is saying. As Parliament, do we see skewed contracts and allow those skewed contracts to be able to exploit Kenyans? Is that panacea? Is that something that we can do as a prophylax to ensure that Kenyans can believe that Article 1 of the Constitution gives us the mandate to represent them in Parliament? I think this is a conversation we need to have. But I think, like I've mentioned it before, those who are stealing from Kenyans are fellow Kenyans who worked at the Ministry of Energy. The owners of these companies worked in the Ministry of Energy. And that is why you find a company like Thika Power, you've already paid them capacity charge, you're finished with them. They're still saying that even after the Kenyans are paid for the electricity, they want to own that company. It's not possible. It's not possible. You can't eat your own children. You can't eat the gentlemen who have been paying your salaries. You can't go back there and now start charging them. Because apart from Kenyan, which is charging Kenya 7 shillings per kilowatt hour, these other companies are charging 30 shillings. If you go on the Lifeline charge, it is 12 shillings per kilowatt hour. But if you add taxes, it translates to 17. The normal, me and you and Dr. Atwoli, we pay about 26 shillings per kilowatt hour.
Thank you.
So therefore means even what Kenya Power is getting from this IPP is zero. Thank you.
All right. So I will give a minute for you and a minute, then closing remarks by Atwoli.
1 minute is enough for me. I just wanted to declare interest that I'm also a worker representatives, and the gentlemen making presentation are my colleagues at work.
Okay.
That's why today I decided to listen more. I don't want to be seen as if I'm borrowing the input of the committee, then I jump with it to the other side. But I want to echo what SG said. You'll agree with me that the most disadvantaged people in this country are the workers, because they don't have anywhere to escape to. When it comes to tax, they are taxed automatically. When it comes to paying those revenues, including electricity and water, so it's automatic. You can't escape anywhere. They cannot run anywhere. When you look at the effect of housing, it's affecting them directly. Like now, when you look at the workforce in the country, it's now technology-driven. And you can't run technology without electricity. And if you don't get reliable electricity at your area of work, your performance will reduce drastically because we use gadgets and they use electricity. So by bringing electricity down, it will be a very big relief to the government and those who are working with that government. So on this one, as a committee, I don't know, but we must stand firm as a committee and ensure that we save this country. By saving this country, we'll help workers a great deal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Chonga, last one.
Thank you, Chair. Daktari, as much as I was late, I was able to catch up with some of your presentations. The truth of the matter is that the IPPs have contributed so heavily in the burden the Kenyans are undergoing as regards to the cost of power in Kenya. There's no doubt about that. And looking at the contracts, the way they were signed, these guys were so smart. They insulated themselves in a manner that it's like a tick stuck on the skin of a cow. They have insulated themselves in such a manner that you cannot just get them out like that. The conditions are so punitive. And in that regard, therefore, I think Kenyans are left at the mercy of these people. Maybe, as a workers' representative, as a big body where most Kenyans feel the heat, if there could be any way that we could partner in such a manner that we can be able to come up with the conditions that may make these people vary or may make these people forego some of what they're being paid, at least I think at that point the Kenyan might have some reprieve. But as the matter stands right now, and it will be even worse if there shall be any other IPPs going into signing these contracts now, because the heat is already felt. There is no other way out. It's a question of now looking for a firefighting measure to rescue the Kenyans. I think that's the way I look at it.
Thank you. I just want to put it clear that we have a moratorium on signing of new power purchase agreements until this committee pronounce itself otherwise through the report that will finally write. So everything in terms of power purchase agreement right now is stagnant until this committee pronounces itself. So I'll ask you to make your closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I want to thank MPs who have made their comments. Just getting into what I had said here earlier and making it more stronger for this committee to come up with an acceptable document. Honorable Mheshimiwa asked why should we sit on the committee of IPRA, that is a regulatory body. We are the main stakeholders. We must be there because the consumer of what they regulate is a worker. And all our cities, right away from Mombasa to Kisumu and other 47 counties, people who are their workers. And they must have a say on what is going to affect them. On an issue of complications or complicated areas like those purchasing power agreements, that Parliament is the master of all complications in the world. Any Parliament is the master of all complications. So there is any complicated case that cannot be handled by Parliament. For example, today, if you went to Parliament and you amend just one letter in the act, in the current act, you say if it was Kenya Power, put there Kenya Power Limited, that's a new company. IPPG will remain with the old power. And the company will be the same. And in the afternoon, you would have rendered those agreements impotent. So the Parliament is the master of all complications. And this is the power you have. And you must redress this, your power, and use it well for the benefit of the majority of the people you represent. I thank you, Chair.
All right. No, That's a tough one. It's a very interesting perspective. So I want to thank you in a very special way for your submissions. Thank you very, very much. So you could stay if you wish. Okay. Tunga is there. All right. Thank you.
You need to be the first instance.
All right. Okay. So LSK, introduce yourselves.
Thank you, Chair, and members present. My name is Collins Odhiambo, the Deputy Director in charge of Parliamentary Affairs at the Law Society of Kenya.
All right. So this is how I want us to proceed. There is another one? Okay. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Sharon Munani. I work under the Department of Parliamentary and Legislative Affairs for LSK.
Thank you. So, I have noted that we have spent quite some time on the first presenter. So if we take that route, unfortunately, you will have to forgo lunch today. So,
for the two worker groups,
yes,
I think they can enrich what Atwoli has presented because they are almost
the same team.
Then we combine them together.
Correct.
Then we remain with the remaining two.
Very true. So the other observation is that, of course, this industry looks like less related. The issues are related. So the proposal I have is that since we have a COPET, we have a LSK, and we have Kenya Medical Association, and and the Kenya Union of Kenya Civil Servants. So it's just basically enrichment of what has been done. So these 4 other teams, we allow you to make your submissions. We agree on how much time we are going to give each of you. Then we put together the questions so that we don't have to interrupt in between. It is going to save us a lot of time. I don't know if that is agreeable with you. So how much time do we agree per presenter, considering that you will probably just go to the actual part of your observations or your proposals, so that the introduction of your organization takes just very, very few minutes. Do we agree 10 minutes per presentation? That's fine, eh? Very good. Who do we start with? Sorry? Yeah? Kupet, I said that. All right, proceed. So it's now 10:58. You go to 11:08.
Thank you, Chair, and members of the committee. Allow me to say that we are 3 of us from Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers. On my left is the National Treasurer, Panay Mwedinjenga, and on my right is Honorable Tonoi, who is also our Assistant National Treasurer. Chair, Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers is currently the largest and the most influential union of teachers in East Africa. The union draws its members from the post-primary sector, which includes secondary schools, teachers training colleges, and non-degree granting technical training institutions. COPET is delighted to make representation to the Department Committee on Energy on the impact of high cost of energy on workers in Kenya. Indeed, the rising cost of electricity and fuel is a major livelihood issue for workers in Kenya, as these 2 items largely determine the cost of living. Before we delve into the impact of the high energy prices, we wish to fully associate ourselves with the recommendations made to this committee by the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, and the Engineers Association of Kenya. These, and also what COTU has presented. The business and professional associations have the correct understanding of the link between electricity prices, economic growth, and national prosperity. To emphasize, Chair, the associations have made far-reaching recommendations on reducing national grid system losses, reducing the ratio of power generated through thermal sources, investing in more clean energy, and the removal of punitive fuel taxes. On the impact of the energy costs on workers in Kenya, this has been extremely negative. The rising cost of fuel is a major livelihood issue for workers in Kenya. For example, petroleum and electricity prices directly determine the cost of living, since energy is a key component of the consumer cost of goods and services. The ongoing demonstrations called by Azimio Coalition testified to the popular concern among the working class and the working poor about their cost of living, increased food prices, and cost of travel, which have drained the already meager incomes most households rely on. The energy cost impact workers in the following ways. Chair, it has brought on increased financial burden. High energy costs put a strain on workers' budgets. When a substantial portion of income goes towards paying for electricity, workers will have less money to spend on other basic items like food. The quality of life, the workers and their families will be greatly affected. Second, Chair, reduced disposable income. High energy costs limit workers' disposable income, which is the money available for spending on non-essential items and activities. Workers are left with little or no savings for emergencies, and their personal growth will be limited. And three, decreased job satisfaction. Chair, as I've mentioned earlier, teachers heavily rely on electricity because after school, but even at school, for their basic requirements, we need to prepare using electricity. When electricity cost is high, and we have carried work home, we have reduced motivation to work because sometimes when you go back before you are the learners, like teachers, we are poorly prepared. So workers who face high energy cost feel dissatisfied with their jobs if their income is not sufficient to cover their basic needs and energy expenses. Just over the past year, some households have seen their energy bills double due to increases in electricity and gas costs. This leads to stress, frustration, and decreased motivation of work. Ultimately, it may affect their job performance, productivity, and overall engagement in the workplace. And four, limited job mobility. High energy costs restrict workers' ability to pursue better job opportunities or relocate to work. If energy costs are significant expense, workers may hesitate to accept job offers in different areas due to increased cost burden, and this limits professional growth and the ability to seek better job opportunities. Number five, impact on industries. Chair, you remember I mentioned that we have really associated ourselves with what Kenya Association of Manufacturers have given us their recommendations. Certain industries, such as manufacturing, agriculture, and transportation, heavily or rely on energy to operate their machinery, vehicles, and equipment. When energy costs rise, businesses in these sectors may face financial challenges and may have to cut costs by reducing wages, laying off workers, or limiting hiring. This can result in job losses, reduced working hours, or stagnant wage growth for workers in these industries. I think Dr. Atwoli has also even mentioned that the investor confidence is reduced, because if you know you are going to make losses, why do you invest? And if the cost of electricity is the cost, then you just say, let me move to Tanzania, which better opportunities. Because in the same environment, there is freedom of movement across borders and so on. So we have got serious impact on this area of job losses due to decreased investment because of the high cost of electricity or energy. And our sixth is the disproportionate impact on low-income workers. High energy costs often have a more significant impact on low-income workers who have limited financial resources. These workers may already be struggling to make ends meet, and higher energy expenses can exacerbate their financial difficulties. The burden of high energy costs can also contribute to income inequality and perpetuate socioeconomic disparities among workers. Chair, the second phase is to be done by my brother Tunui on our recommendations.
You have only 2 minutes. Huh? That
okay.
It's consumed date.
Thank you, Chair.
Karibu sana,
As already introduced, I am Ronald Tonoi, Assistant National Treasurer, and I'm former member of Parliament for Med Central.
Sure.
I'm very happy to be here. I think this is my third time since I exited Parliament last year. Okay. So I'm happy to be here.
Can I increase you an additional 1 minute?
Thank you.
For that particular reason.
I want to associate myself with what the proposals which were made by Atwoli. I think they were very good proposals, and you need to take them very, very seriously. Apart from this, because power generation is a very lucrative business, why don't we extend the same benefit to homes? Because if I have my room, why can I not be allowed to install solar panels and then be able to sell to Kenya Power during the day? Then in the evening, I should be able to buy power from Kenya Power. Then we do the balancing. Because, for example, you come from Ukambani, which I believe there is lots of sunshine. Why can we use all that power in our rooftops? We can enhance it. We can allow people to buy solar panels, install them, then harvest that power and sell to Kenya Power during the day. Then in the night, they buy from Kenya Power. I believe that way we'll be able to invest in this power generation and reduce those thermal power. At the same time, reduce the cost of power to houses. There's the issue of production of poles. I come from Bomet, where there's lots of locum trees. The Kenya Power buys the same poles from Bomet and transport elsewhere to treat, and then carry back to that remote village in Bomet. Why don't we privatize this so that we can easily treat those poles back in our villages, in the localities where they are found, so that the cost of making power connections can come down? I believe we need to localize that one, the treatment of power, so that the connection to homesteads can be reduced. Corruption in Kenya Power, you must address that. If you see any new homestead which is coming up, you will see people from Kenya Power, many of them are competing to go and approach that, anyone who is constructing a house, because they want to assist them to be connected, either legally or illegally. Because most of the meters we're using, we are supplied with a meter which is for prepayment. But when you are paying and you inquire about that meter, you realize it's not even in your name. It's in another person's name. And these are supplied by people from Kenya Power. I believe that way, that Kenya Power is losing income, and because of that inefficiency, because of that corruption, the costs which are incurred by Kenya Power goes up, and it will make everything very expensive. As a member of parliament, you know, we were having a problem, especially with those homesteads which we connected with through REREC, because of the way Kenya Power and REA used to work. REA could connect a village with power, but Kenya Power could fail to supply meters for all 5 years. I don't know if you have dealt with that. Kindly deal with that so that there is an efficiency in that sector and so that our people can be connected in a better way. Currently, even there are meters which are fake. I saw one of you the other day was able to connect himself with power. I believe that needs to be regularized instead of uprooting the whole of that system. But there are even meters which you are supplied with. They look very nice, but the meters never move. The readings are always the same. Whatever, even when you use the power, the readings will always be the same. You also need to investigate that there could be the presence of fake meters in the market, which will add to the overall high cost of power in the market. Those are some of the things which you need to address, but you also need to ensure that those what we call illegal connections are regularized. How come those illegal connections are cheaper? Because if I am putting up a house and I have to wait for Kenya Power to connect me, it will take a whole 2 years. But if I talk to someone, they will be able to connect me within one single day, very cheaply. But a quotation from Kenya Power will tell me it is 1 million. You are not within the radius of the transformer. But if I talk to somebody, parting with only 70,000, I will be able to be connected with power. So why don't we simply regularize those which have been connected illegally and cheaply by providing the correct meters, so that these same people don't connect using the wrong meters, which never move. The meter ratings are ever the same. I think we need to address those issues. Thank you, Chair, for this the opportunity.
Thank you
you granted to me.
Thank you. You brought out important issues. When the other presenters have done their part, there are some of those issues I want us to have a small discussion around. So there is something called gender sensitivity and gender fairness. So why don't we have the presentation from Kenya Medical Association before we go to the main again?
Thank you, Chair. So the Kenya Medical Association is the umbrella professional body for doctors in Kenya with a twin mandate to champion the welfare of doctors and also to advocate for the provision of quality healthcare services within the country. So the escalating cost of electricity in Kenya has a significant impact in various sectors, including healthcare. And these high costs of electricity have far-reaching effects and in the provision of quality healthcare. So KMA has noted an increase in operational expenses of the hospitals. Hospitals require significant amount of electricity to power medical equipment, for lighting, heating, and cooling systems, and this strains now the hospital budget and limits the ability to provide services to Kenya. And also this will effectively increase the healthcare service fees in order to meet these increased electricity costs in hospitals, and this will also limit access to healthcare for all, and also be a stumbling block to the universal health coverage in the country. And also there's increase in breakdown and malfunction of medical equipment due to unstable electricity supply as a result of the high costs, especially when you're dealing with advanced diagnostic and treatment devices, which are sensitive to fluctuations in electricity supply and voltage. So also there'll be poor storage and preservation of medicines, vaccines and blood products that require refrigeration to maintain the efficacy and safety. And so we'll have a disruption in the cold chain management, which jeopardizes the stability of these products, which might lead also to massive wastage. Patients are also unable to maintain the medication within the required temperatures, for example, in diabetics and the insulin temperature that is required, leading to significant morbidity and mortality. So what KMA is proposing or recommends to the committee is the government to provide subsidies or incentives for medical facilities to reduce their electricity costs. This could be in the form of reduced tariffs for medical institutions or grants for implementing energy-efficient upgrades. We also advocate for the relevant authorities to ensure that electricity tariffs are reasonable and fair for both consumers and electricity providers, which might involve advocating for transparent billing practices and monitoring utility company performance. We also, KMA encourages the development and implementation of smart grids to optimize electricity distribution, which will also lead to reduction of losses and improve overall energy efficiency. We also support Mr. Tony, the COPET position on use of alternative or rather renewable energy such as solar, wind, and also geothermal power. This will be more cost effective and in the long run, and it will help reduce reliance on expensive fossil fuels for electricity generation. We also advocate for education of, apart from medical professionals, the public on the importance of energy conservation and how small changes in behavior can contribute to reducing electricity consumption. So in summary, the increasing cost of electricity not only has a significant negative effect on individuals' economic well-being, as has been shared, it also has a great impact on the healthcare sector, and it's a stumbling block to the realization of universal healthcare coverage through increased hospital fees to meet this increased electricity cost, and also will challenge, of course, the operations of the Kenyan healthcare system. Thank you.
Excellent. So we thank you for your good presentation. I want us to have the UKCS, because I'm meant to understand it's more or less what Atwoli presented, so you will have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and the committee at large. My name is Comfort Ademba. I'm the Deputy Secretary General, Union of Kenya Civil Servants. UKCS is the union that represents workers from the government ministries. And in this motion, I'd like to state that our members, being the public servants, they are being affected by the high cost of electricity in their workplaces, at homes, and even in their businesses, and as well in their businesses. Therefore, we recognize the crucial role that is ongoing on addressing the high cost of electricity in the country, caused by partly the energy inefficiencies, heavily dependent on imported fuels, energy monopolies, among others. The issue raised in the motion has significant implication for consumers, businesses, individuals, including workers, and the overall economic development of the country. As a workers' body, we felt that there is need for negotiations and concessions with the independent power producers, because this is what is coming out as the major cause of the high electricity cost in the country. And as what my colleagues have also said, is that most of these concessions were made so many years back, and therefore they have taken advantage of that. There is this need for negotiations with those particular companies to see if the cost of electricity can be reduced. There's also a need for transparency in agreements with the IPPs, because there's a lot of cloudiness and a lot of dark secrets between them and Kenya Power. Therefore, as a committee, we will encourage that you seek for transparency with this particular company. We also would wish to have public disclosure of information on these agreements and their shareholding, just as what Brother Atwoli had disclosed earlier on, that we need to know who are these people owning these companies, so that then the public can be safeguarded from this particular group of individuals. Then we also wish to seek for competition in energy distribution, so that this mandate is not given one monopoly for Kenya Power, but we can allow other stakeholders as well to bid in the distribution of power. This would foster innovation, improve service quality, and promote competition in the energy sector, thus opening up the distribution market to offer more competitive rates and energy services, and ultimately lead to reduced electricity costs for consumers. We would also vote for investment in renewable energy sources, so that we not only rely on fossil fuel that is becoming very expensive, now that Kenya does not produce any of this, and therefore we have to buy from other countries in terms of dollars, and this has that impact of increasing the cost of fuel. So if the government can take this particular opportunity and invest heavily in renewable sources like the geothermal, wind power, then we know that the cost of power can be able to go down. Then we also would also vote for promote decentralized energy solutions, such as community solar projects and mini grids, can empower local communities and reduce transmission costs by generating electricity closer to the point of consumption. This one I can give an example of a village in my place in Funyula, where we have these solar panels that were put there by a private consumer, and is able to light the whole village at a very low cost, and it has covered almost 3-4 villages in that particular area. So if the government can come in and encourage such like measures, then this will also lower the cost of electricity to the general public. The same thing can be done through peer-to-peer energy trading, whereby if somebody has the solar panels at home, then he can be allowed to share with his neighbors in such a manner that we reduce the increasing consumption on the main grid. Lastly, we'll also vote for to conduct a comprehensive audit for Kenya Power, because this is where the elephant is. Because most of these contracts with IPP are being signed between those private companies and Kenya Power. So having a comprehensive audit from this particular committee, then that one will protect our consumers. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you very much for your detailed observations and recommendations. So we are going to have the last 10 minutes for LSK. So LSK.
Thank you so much, Chair. As I stated earlier, Collins Odhiambo is my name. I'm the Deputy Secretary at the Law Society of Kenya in charge of public interest, and also the Director of Parliamentary Affairs and Legislation. Chair, to begin with, we would want to appreciate the step that the committee has taken towards addressing the issue of escalating power in the country. I'll highlight, Chair, because we have a written memorandum, we do not intend to amend anything in it. So for purposes of record, because the Parliament is a house of records, we'd wish that the Parliament adopts it wholly. That said, I would wish just to highlight what we've presented before this committee. Our take is that there is quite a robust legislative framework for power production. We have several laws. I'll mention the Constitution, the Energy Act 2019. We have the Feed It In Tariffs Policy of 2012, Energy Liquefied Petroleum Gas Regulation, Public-Private Partnership Act, Public Procurement and Asset Disposal, Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Regulation. So as you can see, Chair, the problem in Kenya is not about legislations to regulate. And I believe the mandate of the committee now gets the cracks when it comes to investigating why do we have this high cost. we've noted that the reason for this high cost, one of them is monopoly by Kenya Power, because it does not allow the market forces to prevail to enable balancing of prices. And I believe if there's any recommendation to be made, we may want to suggest that we need to have mini Kenya Powers in the counties so that we don't have to suffer the problem of people going to say that, why did you amend the Kenya Power Act? We are going to take you to court for references. That would actually help in terms of twisting the arms of the people who are putting their boots on our necks. They'll be able to come down to negotiate. That is just one of the measures that we think in terms of legislative regulation. So monopoly has led to lack of competition. It has also led to limited incentive for cost reduction, because the question is what I do at the end of the day. It has also led to limited consumer choice. You have no choice whatsoever. Remember what was captioned on news the other day when the member was arrested, because he had genuine complaints about people interfering with power at his place. But you see, he had no alternative. He still had to deal with KPLC. Of course, whatever happened, happened, but it gave us a very strong manifestation of what monopoly can do. They fear nobody, they don't care about anyone. If they don't care about a member of parliament, how much more do you think they'll care about Mr. John Indrosinga? The other issue is generation costs and fuel prices have also led to very high escalating power prices. As indicated by my predecessors, I associate myself with the sentiments they've shared about cost of generation. It gets higher and it oscillates with the international prices of fuel. When it goes high, we have to suffer it. When it goes low, unfortunately, I don't see them reducing it substantially to give us credit. We've also seen that we have limited renewable energy integration, which is very essential, especially in a globalized world. We need to be open to innovation and accept, especially companies that can come to invest with the renewable energy integration. I watched a documentary on Kibera where people are able to use their fishes to produce biogas and also to light and also to use it for power. That would be a very good incentive if we have places like Philippines where there are companies that have tested this process and has effectively worked in places that we now refer as Vitongoji Duni in Kenya. There's also the infrastructure investment and maintenance. This aspect has also been very hard-hitting on people. The Kenya Power does not take this course. If you want to do any electricity, I come back to the example that was that was shown on TV. The member of parliament actually spent his own money in putting the infrastructure. At the end of the day, he was being told that was illegal. Where shall we go? Sincerely. Then there's the issue of policy and regulatory challenges. That is inconsistency in policy and regulatory framework. I believe this is spoken to in terms of being able to open up the contracts that are signed to people so that we scrutinize and make comments about them. There's no contract that is permanent. Life itself is not even permanent. So we should not be given this idea, oh, these are permanent contracts, there's nothing we can do about it. If it is difficult, we can make constitutional references in court. If something is anti-citizens who are actually the sovereign, the courts can pronounce themselves over it. So we have an opportunity to leverage even through litigation on how then we can protect the consumers. So what are the implications of this escalating cost of electricity in Kenya to various stakeholders? This has been spoken to by my predecessors, and I don't need to belabor to add anything more about it. As the Law Society, we feel impact of it. We have members, actually, every company that is formed is either formed by a lawyer or a lawyer associate. And you'll find that lawyers also offer their services as corporate secretaries. So whatever happened at the medical industries, we feel the impact, and we sympathize with that position. Our feeling is consumers have been actually impacted very badly because of the rising electricity tariff, which strain household budgets. I think I got my shocker when God blessed me and I got a little high in salary. So I decided to move from one area of Nairobi to the leafy suburbs. I was used to buying tokens and paying electricity for 2,000 per month. When the electric rate for the month came, I was given 15,000 to pay. The first question I asked them, do I have an industry in my house? That is an experience several Kenyans are actually going through, and it happens more when we have unregulated. So the consumers are actually feeling the strain in their household budgets. Secondly, we have businesses, they really feel detrimentally impacted because most businesses now have to go to do generations, buying generator. We've gone the Lagos way. Everywhere you go, someone must have his own generator as a backup, yet you still pay Kenya Power. We also have this cost, escalating costs. It undermines Kenya's preferred place for investment. So everybody is running away to the other countries. Because I was looking through the cheapest countries in terms of electricity. Kenya did not appear among the top 10. And that is so disheartening. Yet we are actually the economic stakeholder of this region in East and Central Africa. Unfortunately, even Sudan, that is at war, is actually having cheaper electricity than we have at the moment. You can Google search and it will really surprise you. So Kenya is becoming less competitive, and I believe that is a very strong reason for protecting our sovereignty. So there is need for us to come in and find a solution. Then there's also the issue of energy access and affordability. Our electricity cost poses challenge to achieving this universal access and affordability target. So we lag behind. Reason why we lag behind, simply because we do not want to talk to the elephant in the house. Today we've given recommendations, and I believe they'll be helpful. What are our proposals? We propose that we need to promote renewable energy integration, side by side what Kenya Power is providing. I use the example of Kibra. We need to improve energy efficiency. This could be done through implementing energy efficiency programs as using rightful appliances, etc., so that we reduce on general population consumption. Cumulative, that's the word I wanted to get. Cumulatively, we need to reduce so that we advise people the right appliances to use. That would actually help in a big way. We also need to strengthen transmission and distribution systems. Most often you'll find the power lines are down, blackout all over the country and such kind of stuff. Then we also need to encourage private sector participation, but this should be done under very strict rules of accountability so that we don't end up with the situation that we are in. We also need to improve policy regulatory framework. I've indicated that it is very crucial because this would help to attract investment, to ensure also competition and create predictable business environment. I've given suggestions of probably having mini Kenya Powers within the counties because we have 2 levels of government. It doesn't really matter anymore because we have a new dispensation. We also need to enhance consumer awareness and engagement. This would be very helpful. We also need to introduce market liberalization and competition so that we actually challenge the domain of monopoly. We need to implement unbundling of functions. That is what my brother has spoken to. If you are able to produce solar, you can actually also sell it to Kenya Power at that level. Then something I need to speak to, we need also to encourage the process of reticulation. If in River Kuja in Nyanza I can be able to produce power, then the county governments can actually invest in such things and produce more power and give it to the national grid. That would be helpful. We need to strengthen the regulatory oversight. I think there's been a lot of weakness here because most of these things that we are talking about are afterfacts. Things have happened, signatures have been appended, and we really feel we are bound. So whenever these processes of signing of documents are taking place, we need to be more transparent, more open, so that the public participation aspect of the Constitution can be engendered. Then we need to promote consumer choice and empowerment. I spoke to that in my opening remarks. Also, we recommend that we need to enhance transparency and accountability. This has been spoken to, especially...
You can, you have like a minute.
A minute, yeah. So that is my 13th point. In conclusion, therefore, that is my page 11. We've concluded by saying that the essential cost of electricity in Kenya present a complex challenge for various stakeholders, and the burden falls heavily on consumers, straining household budgets and hindering the growth of business across the sector. Moreover, the implication extend to the government, requiring a re-evaluation of energy policies and pursuit of sustainable alternative. I rest my presentation. Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right, very well. Thank you very much for your presentation. Quite detailed. So, because we have another team at exactly midday, so we will spend the next 20 minutes maximum for any comments or questions from members, and then your feedbacks. There's one particular one that was raised on the issue of REREC. You've noticed that the Kenya Power acceptable losses were increased by April to about 23 or so percent, which of course is a discussion for another day. But if you look at the 23%, it is supposed to be both technical and commercial losses. And Kenya Power itself has confirmed to us there are connections that were done, or installations that were done now running a couple of years, which are still yet to be metered. That is a confirmation from them that there are connections done by REREC. It's now a couple of years down the line, still yet to be metered. Yet it is the business of Kenya Power to collect money to meter people. So basically what happens is that now many Kenyans end up getting frustrated. They also connect themselves. And this power they are consuming for free has to be put together so that we come up with one cost per kilowatt hour that affects every other person. So basically, in a nutshell, the 23% of commercial losses and technical losses is a cost to all of us, to all Kenyans. It is an observation we've made as a committee, and every other member here will also confirm to you that the people they represent, they also have connections that were done a long time ago, and Kenya Power has still not been able to meter the connections. So in one way or the other, then even beyond the illegal connections or illegal use of power without the metering, then you also look at some of the contracts that we've just mentioned, the way they are structured, that somebody has power, you have to buy it either way, even if you don't need it. And yet on the other end, there are Kenyans who can't use power because they have no meters. If you try to use, then and now we refer you back to the famous Kenya Power slap. You can just tell the weight of the matters. So there is extra power that we have to pay. the relationship between Kenya Power and REREC and the scope of their work. We have now allowed REREC to procure meters, so that when a REREC contractor goes on site, you don't have to do a line, then Kenyans have to wait for 5 years before those lines have a connection, metered. So REREC will have, they are now planning to do their first 100,000 meters, and their contractors will go on site. When they finish their line, they also install those particular meters because they have been contracted by REREC. Now, how the billing now will be done with their Kenya Power is now another story on programming of the meters, but it is an easy process. So that we think is also going to go a long way in getting Kenyans connections fast, and also taming on the losses. We will also have to look at that claim on fake meters. It could be possible. Anything is possible in Kenya. And the main elephant here is this issue of what we call illegal connections and regularizing of the same vis-a-vis pulling them down. It is a discussion that must be done in this country. It is a discussion that we must do. If you look at our connectivity, some figures have been given, which I don't agree with. It is said that Kenya's connectivity rate is 75. It is not true. When you go to the ground, it doesn't, I don't see the 75%. So, but assuming that we were at 75%, the 25% remaining would still cost us almost $500 billion. At lowest cost, maybe 300 billion, to still connect Kenyans who are yet to be connected. Now, you look at projections on how much money is being used per year to connect Kenyans, and rarely do we have more than 5 to 10 billion committed for that purpose. So if you work with a figure of, say, 5 billion committed for last mile every year, for instance, which is a huge sum, then we'll still, for the figure given of 75%, we'll still be talking about 300 divided by 5 billion. That goes to 60 years. So assuming we are at 75%, with the rate at which the best we are doing, would still get some 60 years before all Kenyans are connected to the grid. And the issue is, it just surrounds this issue of what we are calling illegal connections. This kind of thing of harassing people when some connection they are found to have made an effort because they did not get somebody who is responsible for connecting them, not for free. Sometimes you even have the money, but you still can't get connected. So, but I have a proposal that I would want to make, of course, with the backing of the members, which I believe members are going to support. And it is to allow Kenyans to connect themselves with some system guarantees to ensure that there's safety in the connections, and then allow Kenya Power to meter connections that are certified as installed correctly. If for instance, you want a connection, the first thing Kenya Power will ask you for is they ask you for a certificate of installation. They are not the ones who do that installation.
Chairman.
Installation.
I'm sorry, but you're out of order. That will be a banana republic.
No, just wait. Just wait. Just wait. When you want a connection from Kenya Power, you get connected where you are energized if you can show that a qualified installer has done the wiring for your home. Correct? Now, when REREC, for instance, wants to do installations, it is not REREC who does the installations. They get a list of pre-qualified contractors who do the high voltage lines. It is not the body, REREC, who is actually sending their managers to do the installations. It is a list of pre-qualified contractors. When you look at Kenya Power, the way they do their installations, it is a list of pre-qualified contractors who are contracted to do these lines. So if they are keeping a database of, say, 100 of them who service Kenya as a qualified contractors, who have been taken through rigorous processes of ensuring that they can do proper connections, what is the problem of then expanding this database to, say, 1,000, say 2,000, because Kenyans are there, wamesema wanaenda shule, hakuna kazi. Then, if then we have a database of 2,000 qualified contractors who have been certified by Kenya Power, by REREC, by the government as qualified, then what stops these Kenyans from approaching independently without having to go to Kenya Power, these qualified contractors, and tell them, look, me, I want a connection, do the connection for me, then once the connection is done, give me a certificate that I will present to Kenya Power for metering. Because then you will realize that if you want a connection, that essentially the cost of materials on the, in the market, probably something that will cost you 7,000, 10,000. When you ask for Kenya Power quotation, you get $500,000. But these things, we know where they are. And we have the qualified contractors, the same ones who are being now paid by Kenya Power, by REREC, to do these installations. So if a Kenyan says from now an enlarged database, I want a connection, I have the money, but now at the prevailing costs in the market, then what stops, we know the cables where they get from. If they are in the East Africa cables, what stops, and Kenyans are not making the cables, what stops this enlarged pool of contractors from even making the specifications of the required materials to Kenyans directly, that this is what you require for a connection, for that connection to be given a certificate for metering by Kenyans. Because if we were to do that, then within a year or two, then you will find that almost every other Kenyan is connected. It is a discussion that we must have, and I just want to correct Mheshimiwa, it is not really, it's not really changing anything. We are not saying that any unqualified person will do an installation, but we are just saying that why is it that connections can only be paid to be done by REREC through a government grant? So why is it that in this monopoly we are talking about, if you want a connection as a Kenyan, why is it that you must only pay Kenya Power to do it? So suppose then we allow these Kenyans, these qualified Kenyans who are used by Kenya Power to also be used by Kenyans directly. And there's a guarantee, there's a system to ensure that there are checks and balances, to ensure that there's safety. Then what is the problem?
Chairman,
yes.
I really want to support you on that. Yeah. We can even borrow and leave from construction sector.
Yes.
You have a private citizens constructing buildings.
Yes. Up
to even 10 floors. They are only supervised by NCA,
exactly.
A government institution. So you only need Kenya Power to supervise them,
exactly.
To go and inspect that it is correctly done. That is what we need.
Yeah.
That will be much
because
cheaper.
I don't believe all the buildings
and
in Kenya are done by Minister of Public Works.
Corruption in power connection. I do support you. It's possible. It's doable.
We can make it possible.
I think
all right, let me have the members to ventilate on this matter.
I think initially you're not qualified that statement.
Now it is
but
qualified.
Now you've qualified it after my intervention. I agree with you, like M-Pesa vendors, we can do that under a more structured way so that the safety of Kenyans becomes paramount. I agree. I am in total agreement.
Yeah, and in any case, Mheshimiwa, I'm persuaded to believe the safety of Kenyans in as far as installations is done is not done by Kenya Power. It is done by the qualified installers, who eventually, even when a connection is done by REREC, it is Kenya Power comes to inspect to see if there is a connection okay, then they meter. So if Kenya Power then retains that role of just inspecting the line, then what business do they have pulling down a line that has not been certified as unsafe for Kenyans? Because even these so-called illegal connections, they are being done by their own contractors who are qualified. They are illegal not because they pose any danger, but because they were not, money was not paid to Kenya Power, which happens to be a lot of money which is the same people who are doing it when they are paid by Kenya Power, when it retains some money, the same Kenyans can do installations which are safe, and then the work of Kenya Power is really to inspect if that line is safe, whether it was done by themselves or one of their qualified contractors. And if we retain that mechanism to ensure that every connection has some form of certificate. Even right now, what happens is that REREC, once a contractor has done a connection, usually they provide some supporting documents to show to Kenya Power that this connection was done by REREC, but also by a qualified contractor who has been taken through the rigorous processes of making sure that they understand how to install high voltage lines.
I agree with you, Chair. I think the point you've raised is valid. I think more importantly that all the counties, the 47 counties, Kenya Power stand them as business units with business development managers. Then it there follows, if you have those companies that are pre-qualified as contractors, then it's easier even for Kenya Power to supervise them. But having said that, I listened to Honorable Tonui, my friend, and Akelo, in terms of, and I think even Dr. Atwoli alluded to it, in terms of creating distinctive companies within Kenya Power. The initial arrangement was to have a Western Kenya Power company based on the regional provincial administrations of the country. The regional idea was to create the 7 companies to run as distributing entities for Kenya Power. But I think somehow on the way it collapsed. So I think maybe as a committee we can re-energize that, because then it will be easier for Kenya Power to operate more efficiently if we have all those entities, which then would capture the other sub-counties. I think the KMA, I listened to the rep. I think what touched me then was we didn't consider it, Chair, that these IPPs should consider as a CSR to give free energy to health institutions. Like you have the O-Power running Kenyatta National Hospital, so that the Kenyatta National Hospital doesn't have to pay electricity charges to Kenya Power. It will then be made by O-Power as a CSR. So, because all these independent power companies are not doing any CSR that would impact on the country, yet the beneficiaries of our populace in terms of monies that we pay to KPLC. That's what I remembered, captured in my mind as the ref for KMA was talking. So I think it would be a good idea, finally, as we do our report, that each of them can take a level 4 hospital to be able to run with it until their contract of 20 years ends. In that way, then you have our hospitals taken care of as a country. Thank you.
Me, I think that would be like, it's like going to bed with a suspect. Because you see, now these people, the discussion we're having is that they are completely out of line in terms of their charge. The moment we now engage them in terms of now doing us favors.
Let me qualify my
they
statement.
steal from us from one end,
yeah, let me qualify
and then
my
they
statement.
bring it in small.
Let me qualify my statement.
Yes.
I think what we are doing now is a cleanup.
Yes.
We are telling the gentlemen, we can renegotiate your contracts to ensure that the country gets value. At the end of it all, then we can insist. Because we still have IPPs, we can't close the door. So the IPPs that then will get into the new framework that agrees with our terms, that agrees with the terms that are beneficiary to the Kenyan populace, then we can ask of them to do that bit.
All right, so...
Chair,
yes,
if you may allow me, I think the message that has come from all the presenters here is the cost of living is actually has been exaggerated high by the cost of power. We all know that power is everything. There's nothing that cannot move where power isn't there. Transport, manufacturing, agriculture, everything is power. And the presentations that have been made, there is literally nothing that is new to this committee. The committee has undergone all this. But, Chair, without actually invoking any element of politics, when the Kenyan starts crying that the cost of living is high, this is what they mean. We might say maybe Azimio or what is exaggerating, but this is now how it's coming out. And as a chair, you have the mandate now to see how you're going to prosecute all these presentations that have been brought forward for the sake of the Mwananchi, whom they are crying for, whom we'll present. We have no doubt. We have no doubt whatsoever. It will only depend on the blessings and intervention of the government itself, because it has the machinery. The IPPs have exaggerated the matter so much, and the way those contracts have been signed, it's just the government that can leverage on that. So I think time has come where this committee has to put its foot down for the sake of leveraging the cost of living for the Mwananchi. I'm very confident, Chair, more especially that no, you're not just a chair. One, you are also an engineer, qualified electrical engineer. Then you are in a position to understand better what is being presented. It's upon now the committee to see how they can move forward. Plead the government to understand indeed people are suffering and alleviate all this. Thank you, Chair.
All right, so that I get from this side to make any final comments, because we have to conclude in the next 3 or so minutes. So we hear you and we appreciate your comments. It is clear that we all agree that there is a problem with the existing agreements. There is a huge problem. Some of them are clear. You can see that they were done to benefit some people clearly. So how this moves forward really is let it be left to the committee. We will have then our engagements and also, of course, the plenary to decide on what step, because we must bring the cost down. Whatever the circumstances, action must be taken. The culprits are more or less known. Now we are no longer looking for who are the culprits. We have the culprits. It's now the formula to deal with the culprits. So with that, let me ask if there is anybody who had a comment, any final comments, so that we can close.
My name is Mwedi Jenga. I'm the National Treasurer of COPET.
Yes.
I'm also one of the trustees in the Public Superannuation Scheme, pension scheme. I want to associate myself with the same member, Dr. Atwoli, and my colleagues in the industry, in the labor industry. I think the elephant in the house here is about the agreement between the Kenya Power and IPPD. I think this should be declared by this government as a national disaster. We declare this as a national disaster, and we forward the national disaster to the Supreme Court to nullify all those agreements. Why am I saying this here? At time I observed residents of Nyeri going back to the mode of transport of donkeys because of the energy. That really got me concerned that this power is taken back to the mode of transport before the birth of Christ. And therefore, it is actually a serious national disaster. When it comes to education, and I want to address the issue of having all houses connected with the power in this country, because that is possible. I was one of the candidates in the Kapete constituency as a member of parliament. In fact, I'm always referred to as an honorable member. And the first thing I did, I realized with the CBC, we cannot have education without Wi-Fi. And I installed Wi-Fi in all public primary schools in Kapete. There were some few schools which could not be connected with Wi-Fi because of lack of power. That is why I'm saying this is a national disaster. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, so thank you very much. You
Chair,
have 30 seconds, yeah.
Chair, I think to sum up from our side, we cannot allow blackmail by independent private power producers who have some interest and have developed, designed a contract to blackmail Kenyans. I appreciate what my colleagues have also ventilated on this, and it is good you are an engineer as the chair. You assist with all the powers to deliver to Kenyans the position and to restore sanity. The Law Society is here, and they have said these are issues which can be, there is no contract which is cast on stone. There is no contract which is, because if our lives are not permanent, then how can a contract be permanent? This is not God delivering his covenant on us, and we have nothing to do about it. We have the capacity, this parliament has the capacity to restore sanity in the energy subsector. Thank you.
All right, so unless there is something burning, I want to once again appreciate you. You are taking your time to make your presentations without allowances. So tunawashukuru sana. Asante. We will do the right thing.